Hey there, welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is Bronx Net's program where we talk to reporters and journalists and writers and editors. And on our second segments, talk to artists and performers and musicians, anybody who puts stuff out in the Bronx and that has meaning for us. We try to invite them on the program. And this evening, we have two great guests. In our second segment, we're going to talk about one of the most wonderful art galleries in the Bronx. But in our first segment, we're going to get serious because he's a serious reporter, senior reporter for Gotham Gazette, Samar Khurshid. And nice to have you with us once again,
Thanks.
Samar. Nice to see you. And I will say, now that we're virtual, I looked it up. You were one of the reporters who used to come and visit us over there in the East Bronx, and we don't do that anymore. But thank you very much for being loyal to the program. We appreciate it. We were talking about this before the show. You wrote a story, and I really appreciated that as a journalist, you told what you think the story is, and I'll read the headline: Republican gubernatorial primary debates rife with misinformation about the 2020 election, January 6th insurrection, COVID, and more. And I appreciated it because a lot of journalists will just say this was it and not put the not truth telling at the top.
Right.
Talk to me about when you saw the debate and when you were preparing to write about it, what your impressions were of who these candidates are and what their platforms are about.
Well, crucially, for three of the candidates, that's Lee Zeldin, Andrew Giuliani, and Rob Astorino, there's been sort of a race to the bottom to show that they're the most friendly to Trump. So they've tried to defend and sort of link themselves with former President Donald Trump and defended his actions and, his record in office, including what he did on January 6th, and including going so far as Andrew Giuliani, who said that President Trump was reelected in the November 2020 election, which flies in the face of reality, to say.
I want to just interject about the nature of journalism and what I respect in journalism. Because many journalists won't go there and won't just say, look, they are lying, because they'll understand they have followers and they don't want to offend those followers. It's
Right.
not about offending followers or supporting followers. It's about reading a situation and telling the truth. I got to tell you, I read, and I don't know if I didn't see the debate, and I don't know if it came up in the debate, but Andrew Giuliani was quoted as saying that he has natural immunity to COVID. That Where did he come up with that? We have 1 million horrible stories in America that would contradict that. I mean, there's no natural immunity to it, and if he has it, why doesn't he share it with the rest of us so we don't have a problem?
And it's if you talk to public health experts, they will tell you that it's irresponsible to raise questions about the vaccine when the pandemic is very much still going on. We should be encouraging people to take the vaccine because it reduces the risk of severe illness and death significantly, and that's the only reason that the state has been able to open back up, because the rates are slowly, now there was a recent spike, and New York is still in trouble. And for the candidates to suggest, for instance, that they wouldn't recommend that parents give their 5-year-olds and below the vaccine, as the CDC has recommended, it flies in the face of the general scientific and consensus.
And I want to be clear again, because Samar is a wonderful journalist. You weren't saying that because they supported Trump that they were wrong. You were saying that the big lie that Joe Biden was duly elected president of the United States, and anybody, including the former president, who says no or agrees with him, certainly in a position of responsibility, you got to call them out if you're doing your job, and I really appreciate it. The other thing, which you are one of the only real journalists who did this. I have looked at the numbers about bail reform and whether or not and how much bail reform has impacted this horrible crime spike. The numbers don't. Now there are issues with bail reform, and the legislature did some things to correct it. But you, I think, correctly said the numbers aren't there to show that this has been at the core of our crime problems.
Right. It's been a very good rhetorical cudgel for the Republicans to use against the Democrats.
Yeah.
But it also conveniently ignores the reality that crime spiked nationally. There's major crime, violent crime is up in a lot of states which didn't pass bail reform, and we are living through a time of extreme disruption because of this pandemic, and it's clear in it shows up in the crime rates. So bail reform had nothing to do with it. Now the problem is even Democrats are guilty of making the same connection between
Yes, that's true. And if you look at we did a couple of debates here, but if you look at some candidates who are running, they are running on a platform of saying, the established people did not do the right thing with bail reform.
right. Yeah, and Tom Suozzi's uh, running on that,
You took
and
the words out of my mouth.
Kathy Hochul, even to a degree, wants to strengthen the bail law by adding the dangerousness standard. And all Republicans agree with that. Mayor Eric Adams has been
Yes.
very vociferous about that. So that's one.
Well, she catered to it. I'll have to tell you, my own analysis showed that I thought the judges should have more discretion. However, having said that, the problem is then you give judges a chance to have racial justice, so to speak, or racial injustice, because you could have one judge who has some personal issues, and then they make the wrong judgment.
Right.
So that's a sticky slope. But the one issue that gets avoided, and frankly, it's been avoided on the national stage to a large degree, is the presence of guns and the presence of guns in our cities. Republicans who are complaining about crime and the nature of crime and all that kind of stuff and what's causing it conveniently ignore the proliferation of guns in our streets. Let's
Right.
be honest.
Which is another issue, and to suggest that this recent Supreme Court ruling, which struck down the state's concealed carry law, that the restrictions on concealed carry, to suggest that that's going to make New Yorkers safer somehow.
Oh goodness, please. Yeah, I don't even want to talk about that. Let's not have that conversation. And if it makes me look partisan, so be it. Listen, let's talk about the mayor's housing plan. We'll switch gears a little bit. You wrote, let's see, it's a housing our neighbors, a blueprint for housing and homelessness. In your evaluation, how did the mayor do?
Well, I mean, I'll go by the
I
mayor's
know where you're going, so I set you up there. Go ahead.
own words. He's left a lot of people very disappointed because he promised he'd be spending $4 billion a year in capital funds on housing, which would be split up between the New York City Housing Authority and HPD, Housing Preservation and Development, which builds affordable housing. He, instead of spending $4 billion a year, he added $5 billion over 10 years. So he's left a lot of housing advocates and the city council disappointed. Now, bear in mind, he is attempting a sort of a pivot by combining NYCHA, public housing, affordable housing, homelessness, all these issues into one plan that gets at all parts of it, cutting red tape, making it easier to apply for supportive housing, reducing bureaucratic hurdles that prevent people from actually accessing housing, especially transitioning from homelessness to housing, while at the same time investing in building new housing, using new zoning amendments to.
And so let me just ask you about evaluating that.
Mhm.
You know what it strikes me as, especially somebody who's a former cop, when Giuliani merged all the police forces rather than splitting up the MTA force, the housing police and parks police and everything else, we had one force. That's what this strikes me as. Do you think it's a good way of going about it, of streamlining city government, or because homeless problems are different than other housing problems, maybe we're better off attacking each one differently?
I think the way the mayor is looking at it is probably a good approach.
Good idea. Okay.
These housing, homelessness and housing, it's a spectrum. It's not, those aren't separate issues, especially in this city,
Okay.
where literally the cost of living and rents being higher is what causes, housing insecurity. These are all linked issues, so definitely tackling them together is how it should be done. Now, the problem is we don't have a metric to measure it by because the mayor's himself set himself to no
No,
goal.
no standard. Listen, he didn't put any deadlines. The biggest thing is he didn't. I mean, the monies that he put to it are guesswork to some degree,
Right.
and but I do appreciate that if we want to solve a homeless problem, solve the affordable housing problem. Of course, that then becomes connected to wages and that whole other
Right.
thing. So I got to ask you this: what are
Mhm.
you working on? What's coming out next? Because I
Oh,
know it's
mm.
hard to get you because you're always busy. What are you working on?
I know this is gonna air on Thursday, but
Yeah, go ahead.
between now and then, I'm working on the on primary coverage. I gotta,
Ah,
yeah,
mm.
the
Do you anticipate any surprises? I mean, of course, we're interested in the assembly races, and by Thursday we'll know the answer. But it's interesting to hear a
I
prediction
mean,
ahead of time.
so I'm sort of laser focused on the governor's races right now. I think Kathy Hochul looks like, and
She
if
looks
I'm
good.
wrong, we'll know. This is gonna air on Thursday. Kathy Hochul looks like she's sort of sailing to a easy election. I think the surprise would be in the lieutenant governor's
Oh,
race. Uh,
do you think Jamani Williams is going to step up
well,
potentially?
he's running for governor, so but his
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm sorry,
running mate, that it's possible because Antonio Delgado has not been there very long.
but nobody knows who he is.
Yeah, and Anna Maria has sort of really created a lot of energy around her campaign.
Right.
So it's possible that we could get
All right.
a governor's ticket that's Hochul with not her choice of running mate.
Well, politics makes strange bedfellows. We're going to go there. I don't know.
But
Um, what's that?
that's better
We
for the state if you have
right.
someone willing to disagree with you.
Summer, you're totally right. Listen, you're the best. We'll have you back. We'll talk about that.
Thanks.
Summer Khurshid, senior reporter for Gotham Gazette. Thank you so much.
All right.
Okay, we'll take a short break. We'll be right back, and we're going to go to City Island and the Focal Point Gallery. Don't go away.